Other Place by Christopher Bryant. Prologue, Elizabethan. Betty stands centre stage in spotlight so that we can't see anything around her. She wears grandiose, classical Elizabethan garb.
This is a story about two women in theatre. I am one. It's a story about the things these women achieved. And in that sense, the sense where I am on a stage and you are watching my life unfold from the comfort of a seat in the dark, it's quite self-reflexive. This is a story about Betty Birstall and Buzz Goodbody. It's a story about how Buzz took her own life in 1975, just as her career was really beginning to take off. It's a story about how, at the same time, I took my own life by the reins and did what I wanted to do, regardless of consequence. And there was an awful lot of consequence. It's a story about kicking against the pricks. A theatrical presupposition, melded from both fact and fiction. We're both dead now. This is a story. It is only a story. But like all the best stories, it springs from a horrid truth.
Elsinore, a facade platform before the castle. Buzz is at her post, also in grandiose garb. Betty makes her way over.
Who goes there?
Long live the king.
Betty,
Indeed.
you're right on time for once. Look at you.
Well, it's just on 12 now. I'm here. So, leave.
No, I didn't mean... thank you for being punctual. Fucking cold out and hard enough to get by these days without these gale force winds and freezing temperatures. Anyway,
It's been a busy night, then I take it.
not even a rat come by to say hi.
Wonderful. Well, good night then. If you see Nellie or Carol, tell them to hurry up, will you?
You know Nellie, she's still travelling the world. Got 30 days left to go yet. She'll make it. Easy. Awful resolute.
Last I heard, she was undercover in a madhouse playing crazy. I'm not meant to be standing guard unassisted. Not anymore. Have you seen that ghost again?
It's not a
Yeah, it's not a ghost. Well, that thing then.
No, it's just been quiet. Awful quiet.
Dead? Quiet?
Oh, ha ha.
I still think you're imagining it. And yeah, you know what? If a great, big, scary, terrible ghost comes up and says hello, then sure, I'll get down on bended knee and beg for your forgiveness. But until then...
Well, that's obviously not just going to appear if you keep questioning it, right?
Oh, right. It was 2 nights ago. It was that particular star right there, yes? As that star right there travelled across the night sky, just as it does right now, you'd swear on the weeds and cypress trees around your father's grave.
The ghost enters, unseen by the audience, but very much seen by the two women.
Shut up, mate.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit, yeah, just like I told you it would.
It really does look an awful lot like William. At least like the drawings of him on the front of our literature text.
Right?
Well, you're educated. You talk to it. Him. Ask him something only he would know.
Who are you, and why are you walking about so late at night? Are you not cold, or... Well, no, I suppose ghosts can't feel the cold. All right, I order you to speak. Go on.
Well, now you've done it, haven't you? It looks all haughty. I think it's going away.
God damn it, I order you to speak. Please.
The ghost exits.
Please?
Didn't handle that in the best way.
Look at you, you're shaking. What's wrong?
Nothing,
Oh, well, you didn't believe me, and now you have evidence you pretty much have to, right?
I still wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own 2 eyes.
But don't it look like the big man himself? Magical. And that skull wearing a ruff slung right under his arm like a costume.
And you've seen this ghost twice before tonight.
Just in passing, yeah. Usually he just floats on through like he has something really pressing to attend to. Important business.
Important business to attend to. Right.
Oh, you know, the taking of souls, dragging the damned back down to hell, cursing all and sundry who dare say Macbeth inside a theatre, all that stuff. Just tradition, yeah?
I think I need a drink.
You're telling me.
And what are we doing here? Perched atop this great wall, we're waiting for...
We are protecting all those inside from the lure of the Elysian fields. Fields full of virtuous and simple and bland heroes of semi-divine origin without a skerrick of psychological or narrative truth. That's why they gave me this.
She pulls out a gun.
Jacobian.
Maybe that's why he keeps coming by to visit. Always liked a bit of the old dramatic irony, as it were.
I'll say.
The ghost re-enters.
There he is again. Hey, don't bugger off now. I've got a question to ask you. If you have a voice or if you can make any sounds, speak now. If there's anything I can do to make you stay here or to give you some peace or shit, anything, just speak.
The ghost advances on Betty.
What's going on? What's it doing now? For the life of me, I can't see it. It's right behind me, isn't it?
Betty begins to float, rising up into the air. Buzz stands by, helpless.
Betty?
Oh God, I'm flying. I'm really flying.
Buzz extricates the gun and brandishes it.
Let her down. Betty, I'm coming for you.
No, I don't want saving. I'm really doing it.
Buzz is unable to reach Betty.
I'm up so high I can see for miles, Buzz.
Shit, that's it then. I don't think she's ever coming down.
The storm rolls in as the prologue ends. Buzz shoots herself in the head, the set deconstructing as she dies, immediately crashing down to create a post-dramatic playing space. Act 1, Expressionism. Buzz and Betty help each other out of their excessive dress. Underneath they wear the clothes of their day. Buzz in jeans and a shirt, Betty a little more formal but still indicative of a woman living in Carlton, Victoria in the late 60s, early 70s.
We had the first meeting today, just an hour or two around the kitchen table. But as time went on, I found myself trying to channel you, I think, in some strange attempt at conjuring the gumption that so easily comes your way. I started out quite meek and coy about it. I'm thinking, I said, maybe, and wouldn't it be wonderful if it took half an hour of maybes for that thing inside me, that coquettish little girl who might like theatre and might have an idea worth getting behind, to morph into the most determined beast. I talked myself round in circles trying to get their support. You see, every theatre-related person I knew was there, and plenty I didn't. And I'd hoped they'd be excited by the idea. A theatre based on the same principles as the La Mama Theatre in New York. Somewhere that professional actors and developing writers could come together and create something fantastic. No frills, no pomp, no circumstance. Their response was less than ideal. They heard me out, sure enough, let me pitch and throw and run rings as I tried with increasing desperation to attract their attention. And then the questions.
Who?
One might ask. At this, I'd simply gesture with my hands, encompassing the room and beyond. I should have thought this would have been obvious. A pause, then...
Where?
I found a place already, down in Carlton, a sturdy building used for underwear storage, up for grabs.
When?
As soon as possible.
Why?
A pause, and I can feel my cheeks blushing wildly. I'm not stupid, and I don't appreciate the insinuation I might be. I know what I'm doing, and if it turns out I don't, I'll learn. I'm not too good at jumping through hoops. Athleticism was never my strong point. Well, I said, and this is where you would have been proud, if you're all going to be so bloody mealy-mouthed about it, I'll do it myself. After they'd left, sitting alone in the kitchen in the ruins of the afternoon, an idea came to me of what I might call it, this theatre I wanted so badly to start. Are you ready? La Mama. You'll laugh at me if you're not already, I can sense it, but don't. I've always thought to call a spade, and if this was to be somewhere emulating the same principles as the off-Broadway of New York City, then why not La Mama? What else would we call it? El Madre? The Mother? La Mère? No, as with everything in life, it's much better to be up front.
The first time I kissed a boy, I was 13 years old. It's lunchtime, in the dead of winter, and though it isn't snowing, it had been earlier. I'm sat on the ground, feeling all of this powder melt around me from the heat of my body and the young gentleman sitting beside me, James. We've just been playing along together. He's brought some marbles along from home, but they don't roll too well when the ground ain't flat, so we've just started this rousing game of I Spy. It's my turn, but before I'm ready to say, I'm set, I've spied something, he turns around and places a hand just so, squarely on my right shoulder. I want to try something, he says. And it only occurs to me hours later that although it had sounded like a question, right? It definitely hadn't been. No hesitation, no query or examination in the tone of his voice, save for an upwards inflection at the end of his statement. And that was what it was. As simple and as complex as that. He was telling, not asking. He lays me down gently, smoothing out the grass beneath me like he's trying to extricate the creases from a messy lover's bedspread, and I sink in with the insistence of his touch, falling in slow motion through the crisp, late morning air to reach the cold and hard ground below. I want this, I think. Or do I? What's up, he says, and he's on top of me now, and I'm acutely aware of the brutality of his body, how even now at age 13 he could toss me around like a rag doll, tear me in two if he so desired. I reply, your cock, evidently? I can feel it pressing against my thigh, pushing up the bottom of my skirts, and I suddenly wish like hell that I had mentioned it. The 6-inch elephant in the room before me. Mum always said that my mouth would get me in trouble. He blushes and bites his lip, and up this close I can see the turquoise shimmer of his eye jelly, the light smattering of freckles across his cheeks and nose, smell the stale and illicit stench of tobacco on the heat of his breath. He's rough and ready. I want to try something, he repeats, and leans in close. Okay, I reply, sinking down as far as I can into the mess of grass and rapidly melting snow. And then, Mum's voice in the back of my head, pulling out that tired old housewives cliche, like she thought that I wouldn't know what it really meant. Just close your eyes, dear. Lie back and think of England. I close my eyes for a second, waiting for some sign, some physical news of my fate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing. Then a dry peck as his lips graze my own, curiously chaste, regardless of the erect member rubbing across my thigh. And he moves away, grinning bashfully, eyes flashing wild. Something inside of me stirs as he casually runs a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. Something deep down and hot and shuddering. He has awoken something inside me, something raw and primal and angry. Fucking angry. He has awoken my sex. And I hate it, and him, and myself, for even in that moment feeling some flash of perverse desire alongside my fear. Is that it? I say, pushing past myself to take on the role of the cocky young girl that I'm supposed to be. Is that all you've got for me? He smiles. Cheshire cat grin, wide and threatening to split his face in two. But he doesn't reply.
I've had a lot of practice sleeping without you now, and for whatever reason I actually seem to be getting worse at it. It's gotten so that I put off going to bed later and later each night till I can't possibly stay awake any longer, till my eyelids sit like lead upon my face and my brain screams out for rest. And next Sunday at La Mama, Graham Blundell and Brian Davies are doing 5 plays between them, which promises to be, if not terrific, then certainly interesting. I want you to see them. We've had full houses for all our nights so far. It's been quite the success. Last night, I had the most terrible nightmare about being rejected by my father. He came for a vacation at the hotel I was staying in. I don't remember where this was or what I was doing there, only that I was there. You know how dreams are. And I left an awful lot of messages for him at the front desk with the night receptionist, Irma. This annoyed him. He came to stay with his wife and flat out refused to associate with me as a form of punishment, I feel. I remember distinctly sitting alone at a dining table, these 2 empty settings either side of me, and looking up to see my father and his wife making eyes at each other over filet mignon. I called out to him, and those eyes snapped over to my direction briefly. The first time I'd received their attention in what felt like weeks. And this I remember quite distinctly. They were piercing me. They left the most gruesome impression. I called out, "Dad, Dad, you've got the wrong table. I'm over here. Come over here." There was a pause, a few seconds merely, me looking to him to me. Then slowly he turned his eyes away to stare at his wife once more, slice off a chunk of bloody meat and stuff it down his gullet. As he did, these rivers of crimson began to stream down his chin, and the chewing, this grotesque chorus of crunching and cracking and slopping, the sound of blood-soaked tissues and muscle being torn apart against the cruelty of his incisors. I realise now that his wife is wearing a funeral veil and is shaking too, shaking back and forth with, is it laughter, sadness, something, I'm not sure what. I think to cry out again, that maybe he didn't hear me, but my lips are suddenly stuck together, and I fear that if I tear them open, I'll bleed as much as that steak in his mouth seems to be doing. I don't know. It seems quite mild, but it left a strong impression on me.
My friends all berated me for selling out. I do believe on some level that you can only sell out if there's something to sell, and I'm barely making minimum wage for what? Assistant director to John Barton at the Royal Shakespeare Company. What was I to do? Turn it down? Nah. All of the good roles are written for blokes, while women are expected to just stand around looking nice and decorative, so why not subvert that? Why not be the one telling the decorative people where to stand? What else? John Barton's ironing, apparently. Collect his prescriptions, take down the drinks orders, and keep my head down and work hard. Eyes on the prize. When you want something with every fibre of your being, want it so goddamn much that every part of you aches for it, you can eat an awful lot of shit. Swallow it down if it gets you where you need to go. With a smile, keep moving up the ladder. And soon enough, I get plucked up and out of my relative obscurity, assigned to a touring production of Twelfth Night, that basket case farce of a play. The door is finally in front of me. All I've got to do is open it.
I was interviewed in the newspaper just the other day. You would have been so proud. In a way, I felt quite like you, or else I felt for a second I might realise what it's like being you. The interviewer, however, was such a horrid little man that I've scrubbed him from my brain with vigour. He seemed unequivocally stuck on my womanhood. I told him such a tale of our time in New York, time spent in the coffee house theatres, and my dreams for the future, for the theatre's future. And yet he kept insisting on bringing the conversation back to the fact I was doing this all with children. The article ended as so. Foundress Betty Burstall is confident that La Mama has a future. Whether or not that optimism is justified is yet to be seen, but she can certainly claim some credit for making a contribution to the youth culture of today. I'm fairly certain that foundress isn't a word, but good luck telling him that. This tubby little man kept reacting with such unnecessary shock too. Really? You're confident for the future? Yes, I wanted to say. Unless you're planning on pipe bombing the theatre, I can't imagine why we'll suddenly cease to exist. Instead, I smiled and nodded, and bit my cheeks all the while, harnessing my irritation into a lunatic smile that split across my face. I'll send you a copy of the photograph they published with the article. You can tell it was taken after this maligned interview took place. I look like a decided imbecile, cheeks raised high, features pressed into an expression of theatrical excitement as my brain fights a heady war against itself. I wish you'd been there. You would have known what to say. It feels as if there's a change in the air. I'm sorry if this is one of those things, those feelings I talk about that you either can't or won't believe in or understand, but it honestly feels as if we're on the verge of something great. The audiences are moving out of the cavernous and well-funded playhouses and into the streets, and I intend to meet them there. Revolutionary things are happening in the theatre today, and I want them here. Please understand that I need these letters as much as you, probably more, to stave off neurosis, to help me think things out. You obviously don't feel like writing, but even so, half a page of anything would help. Don't send me postcards or photographs. They're a poor man's letter, and the pictures, well, only make me jealous while it's dark and raining here in Melbourne. Just put your pen to paper, even for a little bit. I believe you can do it.
Calm down. Think. Breathe. Think. You've got to think. It's all too perfect, but for the reams of froth around his mouth and the fact that his eyes are still open and staring glassy at me, into me. The logical thing to do, I suppose, would be to scream for help, but I don't fancy causing a scene. Somehow that's expected of me, and if there's one thing I hate, it's doing what's expected of me. Besides, I can already see by the looks of him that he's beyond help. Dead. By the stench of him, he's dead. And there's no note, but there doesn't need to be. Some things are better left unsaid. Cruelly, my first thought is of the show. Orsino is not a small role, and how are we supposed to get a new actor in a foreign country? And we're only supposed to go on in a few days. If this was planned, it was fucking inconsiderate. But that's just it, isn't it? I barely notice, but I'm sinking to my knees in front of his prostrate corpse like a woman with a terrible perm in a late-night picture, feeling the plush carpet beneath me and leaving him eyes just close enough to breathe in that fetid stench, and I think, how could you? And I think, how dare you? And I think, we are all fucking trying, every single one of us. How could you not see that? Later, I'm dull, running my spoon listless through the mess of sultana bran in the bowl beneath me, trying my best to make each side stick. Sultana's on the left, the bran on the right. They keep mixing, though, keep rejoining each other. Apparently, they can't stand to be alone. I keep waiting, head throbbing, for someone to drag out that tired old terrible cliche. The show must go on. Oh, must it? Really? Will anyone die if they don't get the chance to witness one of the bard's great works? What are we doing here anyway? Who really gives a shit? The actors are made of sterner stuff than I am, or perhaps they're just better at hiding it. Breakfast choked down and straight into rehearsal. You would be surprised how quickly the wheels of the show can keep spinning even without you there. Spokes are replaceable. The remnants of breakfast have turned to ash in my mouth.
What possible reason could you have for not answering me? I'm acutely embarrassed because everyone knows I haven't heard a single word from you. What a splendid relationship we have. Or have you left for good? Snuck off to another country and that's the end of that. Me waiting patiently for you here while you wait in return for the penny to drop. For me to finally comprehend that the reality of the situation, that there's nothing left, that you're gone. It's been weeks since I last wrote to you, in some need, and still nothing. Please write as soon as you get this. I feel enormously deprived in every single way. You see, marriage isn't a state, a bond, or a contract. Marriage is an activity, like going to the theatre or playing tennis, something that you find time for, if you're interested enough. I fear for us. I want us to be happy. I want us to be happy. This is crazy. Not, I suppose, that you care, but we've started to run out of written material. It occurs to me that perhaps this was what the tubby journalist was hinting at when he kept mentioning my optimism. Or maybe that's giving him too much credit. I've had to widen my search. No luck so far, but I'm determined to not just throw any old thing on. It must have an element of trying to say something. I only see theatre as a higher aspiration and want others to do the same. If our actors or writers or anyone else can graduate onwards and upwards and continue to create something worthwhile in the theatre, then La Mama is serving a useful purpose, one that I'm proud of. one that you should be proud of too.
You are sitting alone in the cool and the dark. You are watching a particularly live pair of actors prepare for a scene. You're not usually one to insist on rehearsals past opening night, but there's a few tweaks you want to make, and no time like the present, right? Nobody ever got to direct Hamlet by making concessions. They stretch, so you stretch. They hum, you hum. You smoke, you don't work out, you don't eat well, so mirroring their movements feels like you're contributing to something in some small way, helping to make the temple of your body a better place. Worth a try, anyway. One of the actors before you quits his humming and starts to speak, using that pointedly theatrical voice all actors dabble in when they first get to doing it professionally. To be or not to be, that is the question. And so on and so on. We've all heard it before, right? He's making a right racket, but something in the tone of his voice strikes a chord with you, and you start to wonder. You start to wonder, what is the point of all this? You start to question, is life really worth living? Really and truly? You start to wonder, what's the point of getting up in the morning? You never stop to wonder, is this woman just fucking with me? But really, you don't think of suicide just casually, because that's not how it begins. If it was, you'd be pretty much well considered loony by now, and nobody got to be the first female assistant director of the Royal Shakespeare Company by publicly losing her mind. No. They do it quietly, behind closed doors. You watch this pair of actors continue warming up. For them, it's just a job, isn't it? They'll go on stage, they'll deliver their lines, they'll do the job to the best of their ability for 2, 3 more weeks, then they'll go back home and move on to something else. If they're wonderful, they might get nominated for some sort of award. If they're terrible, they might get forgotten about, have to try harder at the next audition. You thought that you would take the fight to them, the dominant paradigm, and instead you found yourself working for the dominant paradigm. Kicking against the pricks used to be your motto, and now, don't miss your cue. At home, laying on your bed, there's an interview of yours, clipped and saved from a newspaper, the Daily Mirror or Daily Express or Daily Telegraph or something. Let me quote it for you. I suppose there are only 5 women directors in Britain, and there isn't one my age. Actors aren't used to women directors. They don't want to make it easy, but I reckon all of this will change as women come into the theatre from the universities. I hope it will. Meanwhile, you just have to learn to be tactful. Directing is as much handling people as having significant ideas about the theatre. You have to be an all-round type. Part psychiatrist, part favourite friend, part stool pigeon. But what happens, you wonder, when the psychiatrist needs a psychiatrist? You wonder what it is that got you into this situation, what it is that'll get you out. And how ironic it is that the man interviewing you is criticising your looks, your lack of blonde hair and conventional looks merely pages away from your 4.5-star review of Hamlet. Your magnum opus, they'll call it. It's a bit early for that, isn't it? This actor finishes, finally. Nymph in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. You don't quite know what to do, but you're sure whatever you've been doing isn't the answer. You'd ask the actors, but you're not sure they care. You'd ask the man from the newspaper, but your hair isn't blonde, so he won't have much to say to you. You'd ask your mum, but you don't know where she is. You swallow. Your mouth is bone dry. You wonder how you ever thought you could live like this.
I think that in the moment, the force of my feeling and the self-discovery involved outweighed any thought of your pain or my regret. Not that that excuses anything, or I don't know. I am full of self-loathing and self-effacement, and I don't suppose any of it's really doing me any good, so I'd better learn to stop up, hadn't I? It's funny, not I suppose that you'll laugh, but I had the briefest period of entertaining bigamy as a possible solution to this predicament that we're in. Logically, of course, I understand that's an utter impossibility, but that didn't stop my brain from latching onto it, if only as an idea. You have said to me virtually, change back to my wife. And my reply in as many words has been, no. I've changed into what I am now, and I don't want to change back. I want you to accept me like this. This may come as a shock to you, but despite our issues, I thought that our marriage was good. I liked it. When I say I don't want to return to our marriage, I don't mean in the slightest that I don't want to return to you. I'm saying that I'm different, unequivocally so, and that I want you and I want to live with you, but differently than before. I'm sorry. I feel pain and I am frightened. I don't want to live alone. I don't want you to hate me. I love you and I feel joined to you in spite of everything that's happened. If I had to choose, I would always choose to be your wife, no matter the consequence. I want to come home to you, but I don't know whether I can or not. It would appear the trial is going ahead. While our beloved theatre isn't being attacked, several of its patrons and long-standing artists are. If they get blasted with indecency fines, I can't afford to get hit by the reverb. I've always felt that I should stand strong by my beliefs, but when it gets down to it, I'm afraid. The world around us is an arid wasteland, and I don't want to get sucked in. I don't know what to do anymore. There's an air, a vicious air, a vicious, pulsing, throttling air. My hands are wrapped around my own neck in fear? No, excitement. There's a change in the air, the vicious air. The vicious, pulsing, throttling air. There's a change and it smells like fire, like violence. I know what to do.
Is it better to be dead or alive? Is it more virtuous to just suck it up, deal with all the nasty shit that life throws at you, or to fight, tooth and nail to the bitter end, whether that's the end of the nasty shit or the end of yourself?
At no point do I think they're just doing their job. At no point do I think anything other than kill, 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 kill. They're trying to kill everything we stand for, and it's been a while, many years, but there's a fight in me still. There's a fight in me, and if you want to take everything I've worked for, well, you're welcome to try. The patrons around me start to chant. I join in. We're about to spill over. There's a violent screaming, and the police are shoving through. We're not in the main theatre, but out the front, in the open air. It's hot out, and getting hotter still as 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 force their way into the melee of flesh and bodies, and I can hear them now, the audience rising up as one to scream those forbidden words, throw them back at each copper going by, and it all feels so illicit and so exciting. There's a brass band of all things, and they start to play, and the screaming and the screaming. I spot one, a policeman, standing tall and arrogant, and through the din, I wail out that forbidden word at him. Fuck! I say, heart pounding apace, and he just looks to me and says, shouldn't you be in bed, little lady? He doesn't speak the words, but I can see it in his face, his features dripping with derision, and where's your husband? Where's my husband? Where's my husband? Do you want obscenities? Let's get obscene then. Shit, fuck, shit, fuck, shit, fuck!
Sleeping, right? That's all that dying is. Same as falling asleep. You close your eyes and you don't have to deal with all the heartache and pain and horror that lie just like a crushing weight on your chest. Who knows what comes next? Who knows what lies in wait after death? A bouquet of lights and colours, new dreams, or pitch? Black tar oozing ever forward, encompassing your everything so that you can't breathe or think or
We
eat.
spill out onto the street, into the hot night air, and still screaming, still stomping, and following those coppers down the road to the station, where they'll hide away and think what they've done is right, is good, is just. It's not me who throws the first rock. It whistles past my earlobe and across the path of the people in front, flint buzzing across the pavement as it nearly takes a policeman out by the ankles. There's an interval in the action, a ferocity that's threatening to spill over as he stops, pauses, and he's not moving, not acting, but daring someone else to throw another, hit him again, cause more havoc and give him a reason to throw us all in jail. In my mind, I can see one of two things happening. I can see myself uprooting the hefty piece of stone lodged in the earth next to me and using it to crack this policeman's skull open, beating him to the ground and watching him bleed out. And I can also see another road, one where I go home and don't cause anything to escalate and
That, I guess, is what keeps most people from topping themselves. That fear. I mean, why put up with all of life's shit? All life's abuses, insults, oppressions, when you could take a knife, or a gun, a rope, a bottle of pills and say, enough! I've had enough. Like that old fable, the tortoise and the hare, who actively chooses the hard road, the slow road, who chooses to keep fighting. I wouldn't. I didn't. I am not afraid.
And I'm stuck to this spot now, and I want to move, to uproot my legs, reach down deep into the heart of the earth and pull out, if not rocks, then clods of dirt and start to throw them, and I can't.
I'm tired. I'm so tired.
The group's moving again, sweaty bodies pushing past me in every direction and whooping and hollering, and I'm stuck in my inaction, and I want to move, to scream, to shake and holler, but I'm being held back. I'm being pulled down. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. It's overwhelming, and I've got to...
What's next?
And I can't... And I've got to...
What's left?
But I can't. Please.
Snap to black. Slow lights up on Buzz. We hear Betty reading her husband's final reply. As she does, Buzz readies herself for death.
Marx says that all facts and people of great importance throughout history appear twice. The first time as tragedy, the second as farce. He says that men make their own history, though not as they please. We can't simply choose our circumstances ourselves. They are instead directly transferred from the past.
You feel guilty? Good. I can't undo what's gone on just because you now decide your place is with me. It isn't. Not anymore. As far as I'm concerned, there's no way of making amends. This wasn't just an impulse, neither was it a fling. This was a great passion. I feel monstrously betrayed. Do I need to spell out why? It's simple enough. You have rejected me. You prefer someone else's body to mine, their face, mind, values, way of life. I'm not anymore the person you value most, the one you want to talk to, share your life with.
Tragedy, meanwhile, is determinist in nature. There is no free will. What's going to happen was always going to happen. Though you shake and scream and fight, you are always going to end up dead. The bodies of your friends and family strewn about you, poisoned or stabbed or drowned, or it's written in the stars.
You couldn't have embarked on this love affair in the first place if our marriage had not been in a pretty run-down state. Nor could you have dismantled what was left of it with such speed if you'd thought there was anything there worth preserving.
It's hard to know what to believe anymore. Everything seems so topsy-turvy. I sometimes think that if I were able to shake the idea of gravity from my mind, that I wouldn't drown. I'd be out of danger.
What's happened to us isn't really an unusual or unique way, or unique as we think. A paragraph in The Age this morning. An increasing number of women are taking the initiative in marriage breakups. It's good that women no longer tolerate an unhappy and unsatisfactory relationship. The men are increasingly puzzled, confused and distracted by this kind of behaviour. I don't want you to have to tolerate me.
The tradition of all the dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brain of the living. Sounds pretty farcical to me.
I don't know how to end this. I love you. I like you. I respect you.
I've got 2 questions.
My one-time friend, companion, wife, lover. You who were once at the centre of my life.
What is there? And what is it like?
I salute you.
Buzz dies. End Act 1. Act 2, Postmodernism. From far off, the sound of an air raid siren. Underneath, music plays, a dreamscape. Betty ages before our eyes.
I am writing to you. I'm writing to you because I think that we are. I am writing to you because I think that we are
Under attack.
I'm writing to you because we're under attack, and I hope that you'll understand the significance of what I'm trying to do. I'm writing to you because
This is a premonition. We exist in a time of saturated images. We observe ourselves, playing ourselves on the television or on the stage.
Go get 'em.
Eat 'em alive. Stop.
3 old friends.
Stop. Notes from the underground.
Stop. Norman Ahmed.
Stop. As you like it.
Stop. Witzenhausen. Where are you?
Stop. Whatever happened to realism?
Stop. Memoirs of a Young Bastard. The Diaries of Tim Burstall.
Stop. A cheery soul.
Is a dreary soul.
Stop.
We are anxious to begin work on the projects mentioned above as soon as possible.
If you can communicate something to somebody, it doesn't matter what you look like.
The performers were arrested and charged with obscenity. You fucking bum.
I endeavour to deal with the censorship of actors and playwrights in regard to depicting our lives as they are actually experienced.
It's nothing to do with any ideological point, but I can't actually imagine asking a man to do something which has next to no remuneration.
All of this will change as women come into the theatre from the universities.
Both women experience the sexism that is an inevitable part of entering an area of cultural activity entirely dominated by men.
Women are more independent, but we're used to, if not sleeping with a director, at least flirting with him.
Meanwhile, one just has to learn to be tactful.
It's as much about handling people as having significant ideas about the theatre.
How much longer? You don't mention coming home.
I have to convince them that I have a different kind of strength.
Get rid of your hatred for me by replacing me and embracing my treachery.
Perhaps her suicide is an indication of the personal costs of holding such radical politics in a domain which is beholden to bourgeois values.
I don't want a walled-up feminist enclave, but I hope we can redress a certain male bias in the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Hardly anyone seems to do any work. I think of them as art college dropouts who live in the country and have mummies and daddies in town with large incomes.
There were a few other, extramarital situations, but not an enormous number.
I can't really respond to your pity and guilt.
I can't undo it all simply because you now decide your place is with me.
It isn't, you know. As for slavery, there is no need for me to speak of its bad aspects.
The only thing requiring explanation is the good side of slavery. I don't want to live alone. I feel pain and I am frightened.
From each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. For years, the Burstals were strong supporters of the Communist Party.
She'd marked up a section on its theme of suicide.
When I think of you, you seem forlorn.
I seem
forlorn.
It's a tension her work exemplifies.
If you can answer yes to pain, there is no pain.
La Mama has had its day. I demand you let it die.
How do you direct something if you don't fundamentally subscribe to its ideals?
Maybe she saw the reality, that it's all a play within a play.
I am a tortoise without a shell. When I see myself in pictures, I can't recognize that person as me. I have no impression of ever having been there, wherever there may be. It's as if I'm looking at a portrait made from somebody else's image. I think maybe someone who looks like me is pretending to be me, walking around playing at my hopes, my hobbies, my desires, my fantasies. It doesn't feel real. I don't feel real.
Oh, love. We loved each other. That's all. That's all anyone could ever say. We never stopped loving one another.
She's a wonderful person.
She's captured our city by storm.
There's a lot of work yet to do. Stop. She was the rock upon which it was all built. She lived her life questioning everything and left no stone unturned in her quest for answers. She knew what to do. And if not what to do, then certainly how to figure out what to do. She had a strong Puritan streak, She had a very firm sense of what was right. She was a physically strong person and was known to break up fights between brawling blokes. She didn't have an agenda. She didn't pass judgment. She might tell a writer that she didn't want to produce his play because it was a pile of shit, but she wasn't interested in monopolizing the type of theatre that was shown. I'd read her the hard bits of Tim's diary. There were lots of tough bits, really tough. I'd read to her and her face would light up, not because of the material, but because they sounded like Tim. They conjured him up, you know? As she became frail in the last years of her life, she'd say that she wished to be dead, that the curtain would finally fall.
You've got no idea what it's like to be stuck in this old body of mine.
She knew that it could look like a wasteland out there, but she knew that she could make things happen. The former teacher who nurtured Melbourne's explosion of contemporary theatre in the 60s and the 70s has died. Bertie Burstall was 87.
Buzz strips down to her undergarments as Betty speaks the following. By the end, she's standing alone, cold and exposed.
It's partly because she was so young, and partly because of the manner of her death. For all sorts of reasons, people haven't wanted to talk about it. And it's hard to get your head around the impact she made in such a short time. She coaxed the play into our hands and heads, and we respect her for that alternative spirit, that sense of radical work. I think that's what's with us right now. She was the only female director in the company, and the only one to bridge the two worlds of fringe and mainstream theatre. Her death was entirely unexpected, but it is thought that her special position imposed considerable strains. She really cared about who came to the theatre. She wanted them to have the very best experience, something that could make them excited about theatre in the ways that she was excited about theatre. I think it caught her at a particularly vulnerable time.
We will never know the whole truth.
Her suicide robbed the theatre of one of its most promising young directors and set back the art form at least 10 years. So, why does nobody know who she is?
Black as a starless sky.
Black as a starless sky.
A void of information.
Not a or the.
But mine.
Yours. We know
So much about.
Me. There's an awful lot to work through.
And not a particularly large amount about.
You. There's not much for us to go on. An information void.
But maybe.
Just maybe.
That's the way I like it. Black as a starless sky.
What do we know?
What do we need to know?
1.
Full name, Mary Ann Goodbody.
2.
Found dead on the 12th of April 1975 in my hokey little flat. Not in bed, but on it. Still perfectly dressed and made up from the show the night before. Face impeccably serene and checked out. Bruised veins showing beneath smears of perfect Aryan foundation. Swirls of rouge, burst capillaries and cobalt skin appearing like a magic trick as the night turned to day. I was 28 years of age.
3.
As a child, my nickname was Buzz, a name given for my curious and hyperactive nature. It was said that I was buzzing. I never quite shook that name, but I never really minded.
4.
Hailing from Hampstead, London.
5.
Educated at Reading and the newly founded Sussex University. 6. A member of the Communist Party of Great Britain from age 15. My political beliefs stopped me then from applying for Oxford or Cambridge,
7.
although some part of me always wondered
8.
or always knew that I could get into one of those if I so desired, just to prove I could, prove I was capable.
9.
My dream role, Henry V.
10.
Of course, back then,
11.
we didn't swap genders as much as the fashion now,
12.
and I unequivocally did not have a penis,
13.
and unequivocally did not want to play a prostitute or a criminal.
14.
A young and militant lady director.
15.
So reads my favourite critique, mistakenly intended as an insult at time of writing.
16.
And
17.
I don't know.
I don't know much
Else? What do we know?
What do we need to know?
Black as a starless sky. It flies around me, thick and pitch and bugs.
Gnats?
Crawling from this void, creatures comprised of starlight, it seems. Minute pinpricks flitting about the contours of my face, my eyes, my...
Starlight, maybe. Maybe starlight.
when I see you and you see me, I don't quite know the truth of what's happening. Intellectually, I know that we might be in the supermarket or the line for the cinema or the subway, but emotionally, psychically, I can never be sure that...
Never be sure that what's happening is actually happening. Really and truly and honestly and totally.
I think maybe someone who looks like me is pretending to be me, walking around, playing at my hopes and desires, my fantasies. It doesn't feel real. I don't feel real.
The photographs are beautiful.
The photographs are beautiful. Gilded, golden.
You're mortal. You've only got one chance to be a person and be generous.
There sits that beautiful girl, face furrowed and gorgeous in black and white and perfect liner, strips of slow demarcating the doe eyes from the rest of her translucent features, pale and calm and impenetrable, save for a twinkle in the kindness of her eyes, and I am her, but I'm not. She looks calm and happy. I wonder if I've ever been that happy, if I've ever been that calm. It's impossible to know. They come gradually, these feelings, all at once, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to keep up with it all. When I see myself in pictures, I can't recognize that person as me. I have no recollection of ever having been there, wherever there may be. It's as if I'm looking at a portrait made from somebody else's image, black as a starless sky.
The lights turn perfectly bland, raising up on the audience too. Any sense of theatricality is removed.
Do you want some water? I'll pour some for you.
Oh, no, that'd be great, thank you.
Here you go.
This never actually happened, just so we're clear.
What she means, of course, is that we never really met.
I suppose we might have, nearly. I was in Melbourne with As You Like It when Charlie offed himself. Same time, same place, same interests, that sort of thing. But we never spoke to each other, never had an awareness of each other.
In this sense, it's quite fantastical.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Not at all. If anything, I should think you'd be the one to take arms against fantastical things.
Well, none of it's relevant to the... Is this a plot still?
Well, where shall we start?
The beginning is as good a place as any.
I was working as a school teacher at the time, and actually no, that isn't the beginning. Wait. I suppose it all started while I was living in New York. Tim, my husband, and I started attending the coffee house theatres in Greenwich Village. It just sort of seemed a far sight better than anything I'd seen back in Australia, you know? These grandiose, overblown Shakespearean dramas, no offence.
Nothing.
In those grandiose, overblown halls, the MTC and whatnot, and you were so far away you couldn't see the actors' faces or what they were doing half the time.
And what is a coffee house theatre?
Oh, really, just anything smaller than most, you know? You didn't always get a hot beverage with whatever show you were watching, but I liked the traditions, so I tried as best I could to keep it up. To me, it all made possible an actual audience-to-actor relationship, sort of informal, direct, immediate. It was this wonderful place where playwrights could try new things without an enormous budget hanging over their heads. A place where you could hear and actually experience what people were thinking and feeling.
And then you were a school teacher.
Well, yes, I had the week's work.
And the cooking, shopping, washing, which is every housewife's lot.
Yeah, they always like to remind me of my perceived frailty. It's just a bit obvious, really.
Nobody's more aware of it than we are. I know.
Our first shows were wildly successful. La Mama was like a breath of fresh air, I think. There were all these rules and regulations we didn't know were in place, or didn't know we were breaking, or I suppose just didn't care we were breaking. We just got on with the show. Sometimes it all went terribly. We had a show on December 20th, 1969. This was back when we were still called an experimental theatre, a show by a playwright, John Romeril, called Whatever Happened to Realism. Now understand, this play was only about half an hour long, pittance, really. But it ended with the audience and actors chanting these words out in unison, over and over. You know, it seems like nothing now. You'd be hard-pressed to find a play that doesn't require an actor to drop a fuck here or there. But in those days, of course, there were the indecency laws.
And that led on to
The riots, yes. We didn't plan it, of course. It just seemed unequivocally in that moment that they were trying to take from us everything we'd worked so hard to build, and so we fought.
And so you should have, and did a bloody good job of it at that. I had similar issues starting the other place in 73, you understand?
They'll bloody well riot at anything, won't they?
Not riots, but I suppose I had a similarly difficult time of it.
Yeah, they called you the Tin Hut Revolutionary, didn't they? What actually was the other place, for those of us not in the know?
It was a theatre in a shed, adjacent to the main building of RSC. A studio theatre, quite aimed at the locals who were notoriously hostile towards us. Understandably so. I mean, what do factory workers and day labourers care about the nobility?
And you used it to stage a kind of no-frills Shakespeare.
In 1973, I worked with Trevor Nunn, the artistic director of the RSC, and we quite chewed his ear off arguing for it. If it was smaller, I argued, we had more room for experimentation, for difference.
Your plainclothes Hamlet was well received. It says here, an outstanding revelation of the most excavated play in the world, a key classical production of the decade.
Yeah, I clipped and saved that one. What about you, though? Where was Tim in all of this?
Where was he? He wasn't even in the country, I remember that much. He was, I was angry, actually. Righteously so. And this was part of the reason. He'd go through these stages of not feeling like he wanted to reply to my letters, as if simply scribbling out a few hundred words was a big thing, and I wouldn't have the foggiest idea where he was or what he was doing.
And you objected to that?
Well, yes, quite strongly. Wouldn't you?
I like my privacy. Keep myself to myself.
Well, that's not what a marriage is for me.
Yes, you've always had quite the unusual union, haven't you?
We had an arrangement, if that's what you mean by unusual. We had an arrangement, but it never seemed like anything less than the most natural thing in the world to me. I was the first to stray, though. He came around in the end, but I think it was a great shock to him. And I went through stages of immense guilt, feeling like I was the most depraved person alive, and immense strength, feeling that I had changed fundamentally as a person, and that he had better change with me or else get left behind. He did for a little while, or else I did, but we always found our way back to each other, no matter the cost. I will always find you. Love. We loved each other. That's all. That's all anyone could ever say. We never stopped loving one another.
Never.
Never. I was there at his last. He passed at a screening of his film, see? Surrounded by those he loved, halfway through reorganising his notes, and about to stand up and talk to the crowd about himself and his work. He loved his work.
That's the dream, isn't it?
He went so gently, and I railed. I railed harder against it than I've ever railed against anything in my life. God, I hated it.
Death.
Infirmity. I railed against going into a home. I railed against it. I railed against myself and my lack of facility. I railed against being patronised. A wheelchair, they suggested, as though it might be easier. And my legs still work fine, I told them.
The suggestion is that you had dementia.
Yes, I lived such a wonderful life, and it didn't end there. It never ends. Years earlier, there was a group, the Australian Performance Group, and they desired to control La Mama if they could, move it away from the theatrical rules that I'd set down when I began it, without their support, I might add. We started a sort of theatrical turf war for a few years, with the APG and the Pram Factory down the road. It was all very Shakespearean.
And all of that led to you departing the country.
Could you blame me? After Tim and I imploded, I moved to Greece and shacked up with this gorgeous fellow, Vlasis, and he loved me. He loved me, if not more than Tim, then certainly more presently. As time went on, it almost became irritating. You know, what do you want? Let me be. But some part of me was still in pain. Some part of me missed Melbourne terribly, missed my family and my loved ones.
You moved back?
Not initially. I tried to do 6 months in Australia and 6 in Greece, but Flasus missed me even more. Suddenly I felt what I'm sure Tim had been feeling, receiving all my letters for all those years. It was his family in the end who suggested it might be better if I just stayed in Australia, and I was thankful. To have to renege on my life-altering decision of my own accord, to publicly accept my mistakes, I don't think so. I don't think I could have. But I lived a wonderful life regardless, and there's a small part of me that wonders if that wasn't why the dementia hit so hard in my last days, as though all my luck had simply been used up. No, I did not go gentle into that night.
Yeah. Another thing I've got in common, seems like.
You can't possibly imagine what it's like to have your brain turn against itself and you and decay.
No, I simply cut it off at the pass.
By the time of my death, everything I used to be seemed locked away. It's still there, the doctors told me. It's just you can't access it. So close, but still out of reach. By the time of my death, I had morphed from a Marxist independent theatre facilitator to a staunch right-winger with a subscription to the Australian.
How did your theatre survive through that?
Fortunately, I'd passed La Mama on down the line around the time I moved to Greece, and as I was decaying, it was thriving under the hands of Liz, a wonderful woman who taught with me in school.
So it was safe.
You know, they tried to raise funds. La Mama was in trouble and they tried to raise funds to save the theatre, but I put a stop to it. I contacted every person I could think of and made them promise not to give them any funding. They've had their day, I said. Let La Mama die.
Thankfully they weren't successful though.
Seemed like the right thing to do at the time, and yes. And they still stood by me, you know? I don't know if I can ever really express how much that means to me. To feel simultaneously as though you were turning against yourself, but that people were still ready to look after you. You know how they say you're your own best friend?
I do, yes.
Well, I was my own nightmare. Let La Mama die. We were in a race in the end, Tim and me both, hurtling towards the grave and trying so desperately to hold on to one another, look after one another as we went.
Do you think that level of support helped you to make it through to the finish line?
There's always something, wasn't there? Always something. And Tim wasn't always around. He had his own life to lead. And I get the impression he thought I was incredibly needy at times, and I was. Not always, but enough to make him frightfully angry. But it did help, having someone there to laugh it all off with. Someone who knew what they were doing. Although there were times even I didn't know what was going on. There were times I didn't want to.
Did it ever occur to you, or seem novel to have a theatre in such a small building?
Not at all. Again, it seemed like the most natural thing in the world. It was what it was, and that's just what it was.
I always thought it was more exciting that way, you know? We always had actors running around the building in all sorts, and the press could never quite leave it in peace.
Actors having to brave the elements.
Yeah, exactly. As if I was some kind of slave driver director making them run barefoot through snow while self-flagellating. I was always just much more interested in what Shakespeare could say about Britain in the 70s, you know, and there was a lot to say coming at it from a Marxist working class perspective. But still, again, these actors are in plain clothing. That isn't the nobility.
And now, of course, it's all old hat.
Well, conceptually, maybe. Every young director thinks they'll revolutionise Shakespeare by slapping the actors in fashionable clothing or changing the gender of a key player. Macbeth set in an office is still the nobility, it's just been modernised. I'm talking truth here. Shakespeare's men and women reflecting the hard-working honesty of the country around them. Factory attendants, day labourers, people without any reason to give a toss about his so-called great works.
And you were interested in this sort of experimentation?
Always. From the beginning. And please remember, in 73 this was experimentation. I felt quite like a mad theatrical scientist. Everyone just stood back and let me work. But it was sort of like a trick that you keep doing, understand? The first time they were losing their minds. It was disrespectful and out of line and this and that. And I just...
As you went on, it got easier.
Well, it became a calling card of sorts. They came to understand that this was the forum I was interested in working in, and they came to accept it. Having it not in a real theatre allowed them to disparage it, in a way. For them, our name, the other place, was factual. It meant we were somehow secondary or less important than the main stage where the high art was going on. Something literally other.
But the reviewers proved them wrong.
Yeah, well, exactly. It was rigorous and intelligent. It was airtight. Not just because it had to be, but because we wanted it to be. We all wanted it to be. No matter what they might say, it was never the other place for us. It was the main place.
That kind of genuine belief in yourself is difficult to keep up, but so immensely helpful when you get down to it.
God, yes.
And is that then what you think got through to you in the end? You discovered that actor friend of yours, Charles, didn't you?
Yeah, it'd be much too simple to claim that, wouldn't it? They're much more intelligent than that. Just blindly jump off a cliff like a depressed lemming trying to find its way home. But, yes, I found Charlie. And he was dead. I don't know what else you want me to say. I walked into his room to wake him up, and I walked in on a corpse. His corpse.
You didn't ever think, you didn't think about it after.
I thought he was bloody stupid after. He had everything going for him at that point, but I don't know, maybe he saw the truth of it. Something I never could. I suppose we'll never know.
What is the truth of the matter?
I think the truth of it was that I had to do it.
Had to?
And that's what it felt like at the time. Nothing was simple. My memory is all shrouded and confused, and I remember when the thought first popped into my head. Distinctly so. I was running lines with the cast, or supposed to be, but my mind kept wandering over and over, and something one of the stage hands said a few days earlier struck me. He said, "This will be the best Hamlet I think I've ever seen." Now, maybe he was just being melodramatic. Perhaps he'd never seen Hamlet before, or any Shakespeare. Maybe the competition wasn't particularly high, but I found myself stuck on this one particular thought. What if he wasn't?
But what if he was?
What if he wasn't, and you're about to release your masterwork into the world? Good luck following that up.
The papers didn't think that. They claimed that, see here, your suicide robbed the world of one of its most promising directors.
Firstly, nobody was robbed, but that's very sweet. It wasn't really that simple.
Nothing ever is.
You want answers, I suppose?
No.
You want me to say I was depressed, I was scared, I wasn't dealing with life and theatre and my womanhood?
I want you to be okay. I want us both to be okay.
I don't know. I honestly don't. All I know is that in that moment, in the exact second that I did it, it felt unequivocally like the right thing to do. And I was raised to always do the right thing, no matter the cost to my person. Hamlet was this gargantuan thing hanging over me, and I wasn't sure how I could ever resolve it. Escape it. I'm still not sure.
Escape it. Love, you could have basked in it.
I could have. It was immense. It was monumental. It was terrifying. I didn't know what to do. I don't.
Epilogue. Magic realism. Lights circle around Buzz and Betty, dragging them back into the theatrical world.
Please don't. I feel like I'm going to cry.
Well, cry if you have to. But remember, crying is what they expect you to do.
So I don't have a reason to cry.
No, you have as good a reason as any. I'd cry in your situation. Go on.
Why would he say that he'd come and then not show? I did what I was told. It's only fair.
Well, he's a liar.
You reckon?
Oh yeah, he's no pickpocket or horse thief. But for someone so high up, he's about as empty as a broken cup.
So you don't believe that he's coming then?
I'm sure he is, just in his own good time.
I saw my father in the woods before, and together we had this awfully long conversation, just the two of us, back and forth, back and forth. We were trying to relate, and consequently he'd asked me who he thought my mother really was. And I told him that she was just as strong and as good as he ever was. Didn't he remember? I don't think he did. He just laughed infuriatingly and let me go. How can you ever be sure? How can you ever really know a person?
He didn't remember her at all.
He seemed to have forgotten her in his infirmity.
Huh. What a terribly cliched excuse.
It didn't seem so at the time. It all made the utmost sense. To me, anyhow.
I'm sorry, I have to go. Will you be alright here?
What? All by myself? Yeah. I don't need to be tucked in, I can handle it. Promise.
Just checking.
Well, thank you.
My pleasure.
I saw a deer here yesterday.
You did?
Yes, it came bounding by. Little brown and white thing, big doe eyes, all full of
Purity?
want, longing. It came by, and I knew for sure as it came closer that my father was going to slaughter it. Somehow I knew.
Did you stop him?
Well, there wasn't much I could do, was there? I didn't want him to kill the deer, but I also didn't want to get in his way, so I sat and I watched.
You watched?
Yeah, I was glued to the spot. I tried to move away, but I found that I couldn't.
Wouldn't.
I tried to close my eyes, but again I couldn't.
Wouldn't. I
sat there like a stone idol, mute and listless, and waited for fate to take this poor creature in its arms. I sat there like a stone idol while it looked up at him with trust and love, and this father figure swept it into his arms and then twisted its spine round in his bare hands, painfully, excruciatingly. And I heard the pop as it all began to dislocate, vertebrae by vertebrae. And its legs fell silent, stopped thrashing around. I saw this father figure slit its throat with a sharpened knife he'd gotten somewhere. I saw the red liquid cascading so sweetly over his grimy hands, watched the life drain out of this creature's wide, lovely eyes and its petite pink nose, slickened fur coat, its velveteen ears begin to pulsate with a junkie's twitch as the life left its body. I saw the suffering finally end, and I knew, right in that moment, I knew that could have been me.
But it wasn't.
No.
For what it's worth, I think you did your best.
And I think you did yours. Off you go then.
Goodbye.
At the end of Shakespeare's As You Like It, Rosalind takes to the stage and delivers a monologue that essentially says the following. You don't usually see a woman delivering the epilogue, but it's no worse than seeing a man deliver the prologue. It's simple and a bit reductionist, but it's also true. I don't think it matters who delivers the epilogue, or the prologue really. It's all about how many lines you're given in the bulk of the play. Too few and you'll find yourself out in the cold, striving for greatness and never quite achieving it. Too many and you'll never get to rest, never get to enjoy the simpler things in life. You'll be caught in an overworked state and it'll just pass you by. They say that a good play doesn't need an epilogue, but it can be improved by one. By that logic, I suppose, a terrible play can also be improved by an explanatory epilogue, something to cap it all off and with rhyme and reason. I never understood that. If you have a terrible play, or a good play for that matter, you're doing yourself a right disservice by prattling on past the rightful end of your story, aren't you? Or maybe the truth of it is that you don't know how to end it. How to best sum up everything that's come before. How to leave your audience, your bystanders, with a great taste to savour. Maybe you don't. Maybe instead it's better you simply fade from view. Say goodbye and leave it at that. Don't wait for a reply. What is there, and what is it like?
Blackout. The end.